The fair go is dead. Pour one out for the Aussie fair go. Oh. In Australia right now, doing everything right still gets you nowhere. But you can still win if you stop asking for permission. I know, because I did it. My name's Charlie Gearside, and I wasn't born with money. I don't have a uni degree. But in the last 10 years, I've worked out, created, or scaled companies worth nearly $1 billion. And somehow got my mullet on the young rich list along the way. Not because I'm a genius, it's because I stopped playing by the old rules. The same rules that have ground Australia to a halt. This video is about the playbook that they never handed you. And the best part is you don't need permission to use it. You can win for yourself, for your family, and for a country that desperately needs new builders. You know, I like to think of this channel as a haven for optimists, for the crazy buggers that think that Australia and our own little patch within Australia can be a better place. Unlike many YouTubers who believe that you need to be born rich and that there's basically no hope, or newspapers in Australia that like to just tear things down without any solution for what we build, there is a way out. But I have to tell you, the next few minutes is going to get worse before it gets better. Like an alcoholic, we have to reach rock bottom before we can chart our way back out of this mess. To do that, we have to stare into the dark abyss. We have to understand the system and its rules so we can break those rules. So let's keep going and stare into the problems that define Australia now. So what is the fair go? Of course, not to be confused with fair shake of the sauce bottle. The fair go is one of Australia's core foundational myths. The idea that everyone should get an equal shot no matter where they start. And at its heart, it came from starting society anew on the other side of the world, far away from the British class system, because you could start a new life, be who you wanted, and everyone had to band together to build a functioning society. The fair go meant that wealth, class, or background shouldn't determine your future, that you shouldn't think that you're better than other people and they shouldn't think they're better than you, and that everyone in principle should have a equal crack at having a chance to make it. Think Daryl Kerrigan in The Castle having his day in court and winning. Think Kathy Freeman winning the 400 meters in Sydney, despite being an Aboriginal woman with the weight of the country on her shoulders. Most importantly, the outcome of this was a thing called social mobility. And that meant no matter where you were born or how much your parents earned, you could have a shot at building a better life. And that could be through hard work, through talent, or just having a crack, basically. You see, all Aussies could achieve great things despite their station. They could live where they wanted, enjoy great public education, and if they got great marks, they could even go to university for free. And this same idea gave us world famous schemes and institutions. Medicare, the social safety net, universal voting, also gave us public housing with views of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which, shock horror, they've since turned into multi-million-dollar apartments. We built an amazing thing, a high-trust society with shared upside. But somewhere around the late 90s, just as we were hitting the highs of the Sydney 2000 Olympics, we switched from playing offense to defense. We stopped building the future and we started defending the past, protecting what we had. And to be honest, I can actually kind of understand it, because if you were a boomer politician in the 80s that bought a house and watched the price triple, and you saw the mining profits roll in, and then you saw your super balance inflating, you'd be like, yeah, we're doing stuff right. Why would you change anything? Now, it's so easy to blame one side of politics, but the truth is, Libs or Labor, it doesn't matter. All of the last 7 PMs are culpable. Okay, bit of a classification warning here. Got to rate the next section R for renter triggering, and it may also contain low-level course language and mining themes. The mindset shift of the last 30 years can be defined pretty simply. We've moved into what's called a protect and extract economy. Protect what exists and extract what you can, even if the nation begins to crumble. Let me show you 3 clear examples and you'll start to spot the pattern everywhere. First, let's talk about housing. Now, despite not being a productive asset, the most valuable thing in Australia is owning dirt. This is a tale of protect and extract. In a fair go system, a house is a foundation. It's for starting a family and building a stable base. Instead, land value has outpaced wage growth by double digits for the last 2 decades. Negative gearing, capital gains discount, there's more, were all introduced by a demographic that got theirs and were ready to play defense once they had it. Now, this isn't a new idea, but this stat always blows my mind. Of the 227 politicians at a federal level in Australia, there are more of them that own 2 houses than own 1. And 33, so like nearly 15%, have 4 houses. Now, I'm not advocating for politicians to be poor, but of course, the laws favour the landlords. They protect the landlord class. You see, in Australia, we don't just tolerate rent seeking, we celebrate it. You protect these scarce investment properties and you extract the rents and the capital gains from the younger generation. This is a game of musical chairs where the chairs have been bolted to the ground. See, young people have had to move well out of cities, away from their families, away from the best jobs. It's a fair enough thing to say, well, that's just the nature of progress. Cities get bigger, times change. And I think I would cop that if as a nation, we were still playing offense. If we were still building more dwellings at a decent rate, or we were building things like the high-speed rail, or at least cut the regulation that would enable that in the future, but we're not. We've shut up shop and we've brought in record immigration without building the homes to match. And it's not because we care about population growth. No, it's because we care about padding the GDP growth stats or making the aged care labour pool for those who already have houses bulkier. In fact, you might say that NIMBYism is the literal embodiment of that mindset. I've got my place and I don't care if you don't have yours. Now, the net of all this is the backbone of the fair go, social mobility, has stalled. And I mention all this not to depress you, but to give you X-ray vision to see through all the bullshit. As the OG Pommy Chad, Winston Churchill, said, if you're going through hell, keep going. We get to a way out soon, I promise. Australia has been living on cheap calories for the last 30 years, and the national rig is starting to show the damage. Mining is the perfect example of these cheap calories. Mining made us rich. Mining made us the lucky country, but it also made us lazy. You see, it was all going so good that we forgot to think bigger and we forgot to capture more value for the parts of society that aren't involved in mining. Now, let's be clear, the mining industry does contribute a large amount of tax in like raw dollar terms. But what is notable is that there's a huge chunk of value there that society doesn't capture. And we could through things like enterprise value or economic complexity. And what I mean by this is we never built downstream industries from mining that turn the rocks into more expensive things, refining, advanced manufacturing, value capture. You see, we could make lithium batteries out of lithium. I mean, we export 50% of the world's stuff. And you could say the same for iron ore, turning it efficiently into steel at scale, or turning bauxite into aluminium. Instead, we dig it up, we ship it out in its dumbest form, and we're so unsophisticated that Japan sells our gas to other countries in Asia. We don't even capture the value there. We get absolutely staunched. It could turn our productivity issues around, and it could be so amazing. Think of it like a tech tree in a RTS or a strategy game. Mining could unlock new companies, new technologies, new automations off the back of a super strong industry, and it could share the wealth around. And indeed, we could even do it more directly. We could create a sovereign wealth fund that took a whole chunk of this value created by mining and reinvested it into new companies and new infrastructure investments. Instead, our simple mining industry has made us conservative, stale, and one of the least complex economies in the world. And today, the dividends from the big mining companies are more in dollar value than what our entire country spends on R&D. Our manufacturing industry is the smallest in the OECD. That is depressing. And most of the time you'll hear the media say things like, oh, Australia just can't produce these things cheaply, or it's not playing to our strengths. And to that I say, bullshit, because everything at the start sounds out really expensive until you amortize the cost over a long period of time, or you get really good at the thing. Every great idea starts off hard at the beginning. I've saved the most surprising example for last: banking. What banking extracts from Australia is our people, our smartest minds. In more complex economies, their smartest grads go on to work in engineering, to science, to technology. In Australia, they go to work in finance. They wind up at CommBank working out how to process home loans a little bit faster. Now, as of last week, CommBank is worth $300 billion. It's Australia's biggest company. It's bigger than Canva, Atlassian, and WiseTech, our biggest technology companies combined. You see, in a fair go system, system that's working, banks are supposed to enable innovation, back new businesses, new ideas, new innovations. Instead, our banks have become mortgage factories. Now, full credit to CBA, and I've got to say that they are the best run of the banks, but every time I see an article about some kind of innovation within the bank or them teaming up with like Anthropic to build AI, I just find it so cringe. Like, let me be clear, you guys are optimizing, not innovating. You are not building anything new. You are just shifting value around, improving systems that create inequality a tiny bit at a time. Brutal, but needs to be said. Sorry to anyone out there that's working at Combank. Banking sits squarely in our tertiary sector of the economy, where you have services and knowledge work. And we also have a rather big primary sector with mining and agriculture. And the part that sits in the middle is the part that we've hollowed out. And that's a huge problem because in the middle, the secondary sector is where the value gets created. And as we said before, Australia has the smallest manufacturing sector in the OECD. So instead, everyone's sitting over here, shuffling papers, professionalized busy work, compliance, polishing the deck on a ship that isn't moving. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're working in an office job and you're thinking to yourself, I'm getting paid okay, but what am I actually doing? Am I actually building anything? Am I just playing defense too? And I certainly have been here. You can see the pattern, right? I mean, the protect and extract economy extends well beyond the industries we've covered. And you'll see hints of it in Coles and Woolies, despite being in competition, managed to eke out the best profit margins for supermarkets anywhere in the world. Great competition, guys. You see it in airlines, where somehow Australia can't sustain a third airline despite having hugely expensive tickets for a 1 hour flight, the most busy 1 hour flight corridor anywhere in the world. Go figure. And same with the super funds. And if you're wondering why you don't hear about this every day in the corporate media, it's because these guys are incentivized to look after the big end of town. You see the huge advertising spends that these guys, these big corporates have. I mean, every third ad on TV is a Combank ad. That buys a level of soft influence. Yeah, on that note, the Australian Financial Review is a perfect example. It calls itself a business publication, but it's really only interested in covering the big end of town, property summits, mining, articles, banking. If you start a startup, you're not going to get applause. Far from it. And I know this because we've been dragged a bunch of times. Okay, I get it. This is starting to feel grim. Stop, he's already dead. And you're not wrong, but don't bail yet, because next we're going to flip this. If the old system won't give you a fair go, you need to build your own edge. And to do that, you don't need wealth, connection, or permission. You need leverage. Technology is our saving grace. It's created massive leverage for individuals. There are 4 levers that anyone can pull to create an unfair advantage, whether you're a nurse or a tradie or an office worker or a student, because each of these levers costs less than $100 to pull. And they are ownership, own a piece of something bigger than yourself; systems, build once, earn forever; audience, turn attention and trust into leverage; and optionality, make many small bets with big upside. Ownership can take many forms: sweat equity, building a business, but the rule is simple. Basically, if you own the thing, you capture the upside. And if you don't, someone else does. Now, my favorite of these is sweat equity. It's how I've done well myself at 2 companies. And to be clear, I didn't have any money when I started at these companies. I just invested my time. Sweat equity means trading your time and effort, literally your sweat, in exchange for a portion of a business. And once you own that share of that business, you have a new productive asset that is legally yours that can grow even when you're not working. And the value off the back of this can be life-changing. That share, that stake can be worth hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. And it can be liquid, meaning that money can be accessible to you within 10 years of working there. Last year, we had our earliest staff at Eucalyptus sell shares worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Canva has done the same, has made many millionaires out of their employees here in Sydney. And what people don't realize is there are many companies that offer equity in Australia, and you don't have to be a techie person. You don't have to be a software engineer. Now, obviously, there is a risk that needs to be mentioned, that if the company you work at does not do well, that equity is worth zero. But that is a risk that, with a bit of thought, can be mitigated and managed by working at multiple companies over a 10-year period and having a portfolio of sweat equity. And if you want more detail, I've actually made a video on this approach with much more info about sweat equity. Now, the other side of ownership, if you want to go full cowboy mode, is starting a business. It could be a market stall. It could be a Shopify store. It could be a drink. It could be an app. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that you own the system. The upside flows back to you. And when that happens, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like freedom. Hell yeah. Systems let you automate your work, free up time, and multiply your output. Translation, work smarter, not harder. Because we all know that time is scarce. Whether you're a tradie who has 2 hours of commuting to do every day, or you're a working mum that's working 3 days a week and juggling the kids. So here's the challenge. Can you do your job in 4 hours and use the rest of that time to build something for yourself? At its simplest level, automation lets you squeeze more hours out of the day. But automation's power is letting you escape what I call the linear income trap, where you're trading your time, the hours in the day, for an income. The problem with that is that there's only so many hours in the day and your income reaches a ceiling before long. In contrast, once a system is running, it earns for you while you're off the tools. You could be that working mum with a Shopify store processing orders around the clock. You could be a tradesman that's built a job quote generator to save time and then turn around and sell that same tool to other trades. It could be a TikTok channel that you've created for DIY stuff, for home improvement content. Or it could be like this cute weekly Substack, like dad blog with parenting tips, something like that. Now, all of these are forms of systems, and none of these require you being an absolute whiz to get them up and running. All these things have in common is that they are working for you when you're not. And that's the difference between treading water, potentially drowning because you're so busy, and building leverage. Audience is about the ownership of other people's attention. And what I've just realized in the last few weeks is that this is hugely powerful. I massively underrated this up until about 3 weeks ago when I launched my first video. And obviously these numbers aren't crazy. Most YouTubers would scoff at them, but I was shook. So I had about 50,000 views on the first video, which translated into over 4,000 hours of watch time for a 20-minute video. So 20 minutes of me doing the video, the leverage involved meant that people watch that for nearly 6 months. It's mental. And this made something click for me, that attention scales far more than your effort does. So when you walk onto a train and you notice that everyone on the carriage is glued to their phones, it's kind of depressing, but there's a silver lining there in that in the last 10 years or so, there is so much more attention out there for you to personally harvest and turn to your advantage. And what you can do is shift from a consumer of that value to a producer of that value. And the biggest hurdle, certainly my biggest hurdle, was the limiting belief that you have anything worth sharing. So to that, I say, get started, start the Substack, start sharing value on TikTok, begin the YouTube channel, because it's scary until it's not. And you would be shocked. There are people out there that want to hear what you say. People are definitely listening. You can leverage this audience into an income, into a business. It doesn't have to be selling courses. And I'll never do this myself. It can be a new job. I mean, there's nothing more impressive in a job interview, and I've done thousands of them, than someone that has a perspective on the world, that someone is creative and confident enough to share what they know. So there's lots of potential upside in audience. In fact, in the face of an AI world order, when jobs begin to go away, there is no better defense than an audience. And I think what you'd find is that not only will your colleagues and bosses respect you for your perspective, but they'll start to envy you. And you might be out there thinking, I know I certainly was thinking this, hey, I don't have an interesting enough perspective to show. I'm not that kind of extroverted person. And it will start out shit. I guarantee you that. But you just got to keep showing up every week. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm telling myself. And last one, optionality, is about giving yourself more ways to win. It's a mindset, but it's also a strategy. You design your life to leave room for some upside, some serendipity. And what's the most practical way to do that? Well, it's to start making side bets. Small little experiments that might just change your life. A side bet is simply using the spare hours in your day to have a crack at anything that we've mentioned. So like a Shopify store, it could be a automation that makes your life easier. It could be a Substack. And each one is like a tiny door to a new future. And most won't work. That's okay. I mean, I've got the longest list ever of side bets that didn't work. Some of them are incredibly cooked. Like I made a search engine for med schools despite never having the interest or marks to go to medical school. I created a swag company. I did a ad testing website that got me doxed on Ozbargain. And most cringe of all, I did pets on swimsuits. It's quite a funny story. I've made a whole video on that. Definitely worth checking out if you want to have a big lol at my expense. But yeah, each one of these ideas taught me something, It introduced me to someone new. It built a clearer picture for me about how the world works. So I don't regret any of them. Failure is kind of part of the point of side bets. In a way, side bets de-risk your future. They make your life less fragile because they spread the risk around. They increase the surface area that you have for opportunity, for serendipity, for luck, because luck is a critical part of life. So what makes a good side bet? Well, it should be cheap to start. It needs to be fun and energizing. Basically, you need to have a clear picture of what you're going to create before you do it. So you know how long it's going to take, but also you're excited to do the thing. It needs to be expandable. So if it works, you need to sort of be able to continue on with it, and it needs to teach you something. But I mean, that's pretty much built into any endeavor or any side bet. Optionality gives you more shots on goal, and sometimes it's just that one weird shot that changes everything. So those are the 4 levers of unfair advantage. And the beautiful thing is they can be layered on top of each other, and each time you sort of ratchet up the advantage. For example, a plumber could create a novel way to quote for fixing toilets and tell the story that on TikTok and sell it to other plumbers for $20 a pop, and launch a washing machine upsell off the back of that. That's an example of using all those levers. It's quite a shit example, but it's creating a $1 million mindset. Now, if you're building something like this, drop it in the comments, because this channel's for the builders and I want to hear what you're building. So the fair go died when we stopped rewarding effort and the music stopped, and we started rewarding possession of property, of positions, of power. But the great news is today you do not need permission to break the rules. You need leverage to create an unfair advantage, and technology has made that possible at a scale that has never been seen before. The levers, ownership, systems, audience, and optionality is how we lever ourselves up and build opportunity. It's how we shift from protect and extract to build and earn, not just for yourself, but for the whole country. This is how we fix Australia. So if you enjoyed that, you'll probably enjoy the weekly newsletter I send out. Check out the link in the description. And until next time, yibbity yibbita, love yous all. Time to go and pound the rest of these VB props. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, am I right?